Now, the people that you and I remember and admire, and many times movies are written about, are not those souls who floated along in the twilight of mediocrity with a remote in their hand watching television. They were those who fought insurmounted battles, who stood up for what was right. Somebody sent me a DVD, which I haven't watched yet, about a young man who wouldn't fight because he believed that killing was wrong, and they made a movie out of it. Those who were morally courageous when it was expedient for everybody like Sodom and Gomorrah to do what they like. Where situations where lesser men would have given up, would have acquiesced, would have blended into the crowd. There's a few people in Scripture that really stand out and really paint an illustration that it's not impossible to stand up from the crowd and say, I'm with Jesus. There's a man going right back to Joseph. He stood up for what was morally right. His master's wife came to him and she had adulterous intentions. And what happens to him? He's jailed for it. Jewish tradition says that he spent 12 years in jail. The biblical narrative doesn't tell us. But he spent time in prison, yet the Lord granted him favour. Then we go to another difficult time. Daniel. In his time, it was politically incorrect to pray in your own home. Can you imagine it ever happening here? It was Big Brother spying on him, reporting to the authorities. And he ends up where? In the lion's den. How do you feel Daniel might have felt as the lion's den was opened up and there were the bones of dead men down there? We know the story. Another story comes from Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, who said, we will not bow down to your golden image. And the gates of the big fiery furnace were opened up to them. What would have you done in those circumstances? Oh, well, I used to worry about it as a boy. I thought, what if I just bow down before the golden image? I'm actually really praying to God. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego said, we're not going to bow down. Whoa, Nebuchadnezzar. What about women? Esther put her life on the line. This was a tough time. And she said, everybody around me, I want you to fast and pray for 3 days. And the whole Jewish nation fasted and prayed for 3 days. She put her life on the line because the protocol was that if she approached the king, she could be banished because he had a choice of women everywhere. We remember people of faith. We love people of courage who are selfless, who the biblical narrative hold up as heroic. And then Jesus implores us as his disciples not to live in the twilight of mediocrity, to follow those same paths. He said, I don't want you to be enslaved to sin. I want you to have life. Death is an enemy. Jesus says, I died for you. He says, I love you. And he puts it this way, pick up your cross and follow me. It's going to be tough. You are going to face a jeering crowd. But I will never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I love you. He says, you are not of the world. I have redeemed you. And remember, no one can snatch you out of my Father's hand. No one can snatch you out of my hand. And I'm going, what a powerful, encouraging words. I have a quote here from Smith Wigglesworth. He says, great faith is the product of great fights. He says, great testimonies are the outcome of great tests. We don't have a story to tell if we've been living in mediocrity, but we have a testimony to tell because of challenges. Great triumphs can only come out of great trials. And I looked at those words and I thought, I like to have great faith and great testimonies and great triumphs, but that comes from adversity and challenge and difficulty, against the backdrop where Jesus says, I will never leave you or forsake you. The psalmist said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no ill. Why? Because you are with me.